And man, I
Okay,
wish
yeah.
I'd have just kept it there. But yeah, increased it, really tanked the performance. But then for the espresso machine client, uh, it was close to like, the record was like 24, 27 return on ad spend, just because it is a
Wow.
higher premium, So,
Yeah,
um, yeah, no target, max conversion value. That's what for both of them
I
is
was
what
gonna
I
say, yeah,
set.
that's cool.
Yeah.
And so you're saying that obviously you do eventually increase the budget in the Performance Max campaign, right? But what
Yeah.
you're saying is that you want to see two, maybe three, maybe 4 or 6 months at that budget level before increasing it, right? You want to see sustainable, consistent data and conversions.
Yes.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the PPC Cave. It's been a while, but Gene and I are back together once again, finally, after a few weeks of different absences and things like that. But we're making it happen today, folks. So, yeah, we're pleased to be back with a new episode talking all about low budget e commerce accounts in Google Ads and the do's and the don'ts. So we're going to be going over things such as Performance Max, of course, standard shopping campaigns. We're going to be looking at diving into like low budgets. We're going to be looking at audiences, Google Merchant Center optimizations, and many, many more. So great to be back. Gene, any thoughts? Are you happy to be back?
Yeah, super happy to be back. It's been a good while. I think me and Ryan have just
It's
kind
been a
of been
while.
ping pong with our schedule. So yeah, it's nice to be back.
Nice one. Yeah. Well, it's good to see you as well. You're looking really healthy. You're looking very like what's the word? Proper. I think you said to me once before. You think the British all say proper, so you're looking very proper today in your
Thanks.
what is that? Is that like a smoking jacket or something or just a
No,
shirt
it's
or
it's a little quarter zip, a little quarter zip I
Oh,
got from.
nice.
I'm not gonna say the brand because we don't get a brand sponsorship yet, but yeah, I appreciate you. You look nice too. I love the glasses, the black shirt, very
Thank you.
down to business. So yeah, awesome.
I don't have my flat cap on today, but for the people that are listening on Spotify, you need to kind of hop on over to YouTube. Although actually, no, we got video now on Spotify, so you can take a look at that if you see Gene in his nice white shirt and me in the glasses without the flat cap on, my lovely bald head. So yeah, but all's good. So let's just get straight into this because this is something that I've been doing a lot of recently. Low budget e-commerce accounts in Google Ads. Most of the time, I don't think there's a lot of information out there really about low budget e-commerce. I think it's usually people talking about e-commerce with big accounts, big budgets to spend. But what about the people that are spending, like below $100 or £100 a day? I consider that to be a low budget account, really. Even $50, £50 or less, is definitely low budget. So that's what Gene and I are really going to talk about today in this episode. So yeah, I'm going to take it away, and then I'll let Gene throw in his thoughts as well. But I'm talking mostly about $10, $25 max. £10, £25, £30, maybe. Things like that, all the way probably up to £50, maybe 100 as well if you want to give or take a few. But that's kind of where I'm at with this kind of whole episode. And my notes is that low budget e-commerce can be very tricky. And a lot of people suggest, well, what about a standard shopping campaign, search campaigns, segment these different product groups out, maybe, all that kind of stuff. And whilst that's all fine, if you're restricted on a budget, especially as little as £10 a day or £20 a day, you need to be thinking smart here because you don't have much budget to work with. I would honestly start with Performance Max. And, that's where I'm at the moment is, I was trying to transition a lot of clients away from Performance Max back onto standard shopping. But I think once it's a well-known brand, you can afford to do that. I think if the brand is big enough, then you can afford to run standard shopping campaigns, search campaigns, maybe dynamic search campaigns, things like that. But if the brand isn't that well known, then I think Performance Max is probably going to be the best opportunity for you to best campaign type for you to run because you get all that reach. It's not just standard shopping. It's not, the shopping channel, but it's also display. It's remarketing that is kind of built into that as well. It's YouTube and Gmail and search. You've got all the different platforms. So if you're on a low budget, and you've got $10, £20 per day to spend, I would even say like, yeah, £50 or $50 per day. Start off with the Performance Max campaign for at least 3 months and just see how you get on with that. That's what I would advise for those low budget e-commerce accounts. Gene, what do you think about that? Do you suggest the same thing to clients, or would you say, actually, no, I want to go with the split of Performance Max search or standard shopping in
Yeah.
there somewhere?
So what I would do, yeah, I do agree with that for sure. What I would do instead of having a dedicated manual shopping campaign, I would run PMax instead, but have search also, which I think we're pretty similar on that.
Yeah, and that is exactly what I was going to say as well. Is that I think that's a really good element to include in that account is have a Performance Max campaign with probably like 70, if not 80% of the budget allocated. Because again, that's where you're advertising across all these different platforms. You've got all that reach, all that awareness that you're going to soak up, which is great, especially for low budget accounts. But if you can, $10, something like that. Maybe even five. Five's not really going to do that per day. $5, £5 per day, not really going to do much. But just to test, maybe a search campaign running alongside Performance Max could work quite well. But for the most part, I think just starting at least 30 days in with the Performance Max campaign and then reviewing the budget, reviewing the conversions or whatever it might be, the sales that you've had come through, maybe you can reinvest some of that profit into Google Ads again and look to run a search campaign just to test that as well. I think that'd be a really good mix between the two. Ultimately, though, my sort of like secret sauce, if you will, when it comes to low budget e-commerce is I'll run a Performance Max campaign for the first 3 months. And then, maybe even 6 months, just one Performance Max campaign. Maybe sometimes, like I said, with the search campaign as well. But what I'm trying to do is trying to get as many conversions into the Performance Max campaign as possible for as many different products as possible. And then what I'm going to do is pull out all the low performers. I'm going to be pulling out all the products that haven't had any impressions, haven't had any clicks, so no cost attributed to them. Maybe one conversion or less, depending if you've got data-driven attribution model turned on. So you might see it like 0.56 of a conversion or something. But what I'll typically do is keep all the best performers, all the best selling products within the Performance Max campaign. I'll pull out all the other products and put them into a standard shopping campaign called low performers or a testing campaign in the background. And then I'll take the budget and I'll do 80% of the budget into the Performance Max campaign, front and center, where we're getting all of our best selling products. We want to push that, want to scale that up over time, increase more budget and things like that. Maybe look to change bidding strategies, maximize conversion value, target return on ad spend, increase the target ROAS and things like that. But then what I'll do is I'll take that 20% and put it into a testing campaign in the background. So then in theory, what you have is front and center Performance Max bestsellers in the background churning away with a lower budget. You're always testing in the background and you're identifying new potentially winning products where the theory is the cream rises to the top. So you identify new winning products that you can either keep in that standard shopping campaign, or you can turn off in the standard shopping campaign, transition into the Performance Max campaign because you'll have account level conversion data. Then you'll have historical account level conversion data that Google sees. Okay, I know this product was originally in the standard shopping campaign. You've moved into the Performance Max campaign, but it was getting a 5-to-1 return on ad spend in the other campaign. So we can continue with that going forward. We know now who kind of buys these products. That is something that honestly, that kind of segmentation, that best performers versus low performers, honestly, I've been using that for 2, maybe 3 years now. No word of a lie. I was using it with smart shopping way back when, I think 2021 or 2022. I was using this whole segmentation approach of best sellers versus low performers, and it was working so well. And I remember the client I had, I think they had honestly like 35,000 products, maybe 50,000. And yeah, it was working so well. And historically they could never get anything working. They tried search campaigns, they tried DSA campaigns, they tried standard shopping campaigns, they tried everything. But then I came in and changed that all around with the smart shopping campaign, best sellers versus low performers, and then I just kept moving the products across, and it just worked so well. So that's typically how I set up my low budget e-commerce clients. Any thoughts on that, Gene? Do you agree? Do you disagree? How do you do it?
Yeah. I do agree. There's a lot of similarities that we have, uh, you know, and I want to give you a chance to reply too, but for me, the fundamentals don't really change in regards to budget for me. And I know, for most people to be like, okay, this is how I would do this if I had this budget. This is how I would do that if I had this budget. Despite this being the episode of low budget e-commerce, basically having a smaller budget, do's and don'ts, I feel like there's still a lot of translatable things that I would do regardless of budget, but yeah, it's definitely something that we have like a similar pathway to success with the Performance Max and search. And, I think that's kind of the fundamental basic of what's similar here for sure.
So you're saying that you're not so strict with the budget level. Like if you've got, say, $25 per day to work with, you're not going to put, say, 20 into Performance Max and 5 into search. It might be 15 into Performance Max and then 10 into search.
I would do five. I would do five for Performance Max, and then
Wow.
search would probably be like 80% of the budget. And I've actually done this with a couple months back. I had it's an EV client in the EV space, and I started off really really low, and I did this with another client too for a premium product, and they sell what is it called, coffee makers and espresso machines, and I had a $5 a budget day budget for Performance Max, and it was insane. It was probably the high 27 ROAS for that company that
Wow.
sells the coffee and espresso machine. And for the beginning portion of it for the EV, almost like 7 to 8 return on ad spend on $5 a day. Like any Google Ads manager, when they see $5 a day work, the first thought, increase it to 10. That is one thing that I have stopped doing for Performance Max. Absolutely stopped doing is increasing budget immediately when we see a blip, if it be in a month or a month and a half. We need, for me, this could be different from you, but it needs to be sustainable. That's where a lot of Performance Max campaigns go awry, when we automatically see, okay, this needs to just increase because it's Performance Max and it's performing, so let's just double the budget. Unlike manual shopping, unlike search, where we can vet the search terms and search keywords coming in, with Performance Max, it's more opaque to do so. So it could work, but from what I've seen, usually a smaller Performance Max budget where it's, consistent month after month is, leaps and bounds better than just a high Performance Max budget, without really understanding where the traffic is, going or who's searching. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a couple of questions then. So I'll let you take a drink there. Did you set a target for the other campaign then when you were getting, like, what was it, 5 to 8 or something, did you say, or 27?
Yeah, yeah, both. So it was 5 to 8 for the EV client, and man, I
Okay,
wish
yeah.
I'd have just kept it there. But yeah, increased it, really tanked the performance. But then for the espresso machine client, uh, it was close to like, the record was like 24, 27 return on ad spend, just because it is a
Wow.
higher premium, so um
Yeah,
yeah, no target, max conversion value. That's what for both of them
I
is
was
what
gonna
I
say, yeah,
set.
that's cool.
Yeah.
And so you're saying that obviously you do eventually increase the budget in the Performance Max campaign, right? But what
Yeah.
you're saying is that you want to see two, maybe three, maybe 4 or 6 months at that budget level before increasing it, right? You want to see sustainable, consistent data and conversions.
Yes, but it's just kind of going off tangent here, but
A little
at a,
bit, but it's
uh,
interesting.
yeah, it is interesting. But at a certain point, I can increase a performance max campaign, right? But when do you want to finally have control after seeing the data? It kind of goes back to when I used to do Amazon sponsored ads. Back in the day, Amazon had sponsored products where it's automatic targeting, where you set a budget. This was before PMax, where you set a budget and Amazon decides from your catalog what can be advertised. And sometimes it works, sometimes it didn't. But then once you figure out the product that is being converted upon, can pause that automatic targeting on Amazon and create a manual based off of that. And that's exactly how I use Performance Max. Yes, I can increase the budget, but I would rather deploy a shopping campaign for that specific product and just see if that could kind of give me the same results before I would even increase a PMax budget.
So, are you running the shopping and the performance max campaign side by side
Yeah,
or not?
I
And
am.
how, well, this is interesting because they don't live in harmony together, right? If you have a performance max, because I've tried this, PMax is going to take all the impressions, all the clicks, all the budget first, and then standard shopping isn't going to run.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true to a degree. But so for my job, basically for my oldest client ever, they told me, hey, it's going to cannibalize they, as in the reps from Google, it's going to cannibalize this. Just have Performance Max. And, with any, so that's one thing that if a Google rep is saying that, they're saying it's going to be. They told me that they were like, just run the P Max. You don't have to run a shopping. And I was like, okay, well, it's not my money, and I've done well here. Maybe I could be a little bit more of a maverick and see what happens if long term. I'm talking about years. If I run shopping
Mm,
and Performance Max together, and perhaps there is a dip in a 2 to 3 month span, which is enough for a lot of people to pause it all together. But I've seen through almost a year and a half. Yes, there is dips with the PMax campaign as being cannibalized by shopping, but I have that shopping campaign on manual CPC and I could, move it up and down with the bids. And I do see some off months where there's a spike in the shopping campaign despite of the cannibalization. So I think it's really important, for us to understand that that could be true in the short term. But if a Google rep is kind of saying the same thing, maybe take it with a grain of salt and let it run for a year. If you have that campaign for a year, run both PMax and shopping and see what happens. I bet you there will be still, if it's optimized correctly, that shopping campaign will give you return for sure.
that's really good advice. And then just one last question before we get onto your points, which is, are you still following the same kind of structure that I do? I know we had a conversation about this. I don't know if we ever recorded it. It might have just been between us, but I always said I start with maximize conversions. I'll get that conversion data in, and then I'll transition over to maximize conversion value and I'll test that for a little while. And then eventually, if I feel the need to, I'll go to, target return on ad spend. For some clients, I just leave it at maximize conversion value because, like you said, ROAS, I think, just naturally seems to be much better that way. I've got 2 or 3 clients who haven't even got a return on ad spend set, and they're just killing it like 12 to 1, 15 to 1 ROAS. Whereas I bet if I put that ROAS target on, it might not reach that. So are you following a similar sort of pattern now, or are you changing that up a little bit? Are you starting maximize conversion value target ROAS?
Yeah, so it's always for me. It's always I know we've had this a smaller micro discussion about max conversions versus conversion value, but for me, it's always max conversion value without a return on ad spend.
Mhm.
Until I've been more lenient with this, where I'm not. Sometimes I'm not even going to set a return on ad spend. On a PMax campaign.
Yeah.
I'll only do it once I see there's like very, very obvious consistency, and I would give it a time frame of 6 months consistent, above this specific actual ROAS. I would probably set it at that point. But yeah, it's always max conversion value, and if I see it hold consistently, I'll switch it over to ROAS.
That's really cool. All right. Well, I'll hand it over to you and the floor is yours, my friend.
Appreciate it. Yeah, man. So, yeah, that's good points from Ryan, and these are all, something that we're both going through. And I think that's the most, value that we could provide y'all is not really speak on things that are more theoretical, but actually what me and Ryan are not struggling with, but thinking and pondering about because it's, top of mind for us. So one thing that I would ask first, if you are dealing with a low budget e-commerce account, on Google Ads is how many products does that e-commerce website have? How many products is it? With PMax, it really does it really well. If you have a lot of products and it's kind of a hodgepodge of all these different things, and you don't have neither the time, the budget to test all of these specific collections and products. But if you only have, like, say, 5 products, maybe rethink and say, okay, well, maybe I can do a shopping campaign. Maybe I can do a search campaign and still have leftover budget for maybe a $5 a day performance max campaign as kind of the bow on top that ties everything together as a remarketing agent. But yeah, think about that first, because despite me not changing my process for a high budget campaign versus a small budget campaign, I will change my process for a high product store versus a low product store, because at the very least, I want to be able to see the search terms and qualify that. That, for me as a PPC manager, will never go away. That's why we run PMax and search, because we still have that portion of search where we see everything, we qualify the traffic, and nothing is opaque or nothing is a secret black box. So ask yourself that first. How many products are you advertising? Next, and this is kind of me getting into more of what I would do from the search side. As we've kind of discussed before, I would run PMax and search. One reason why I would run search on a manual CPC, because I can utilize a lot more of that secondary bid adjustment. And, secondary bid adjustments will really, really help kind of make sure that that budget is being stretched the way that it should be, because we might be handicapped in that area where we don't have a lot of spend. So utilizing a manual CPC search campaign and either audiences such as gender, your household income, or even your locations is super important. I can't speak on a specific e-commerce account that has a low budget of 10 to 25 a day, but plenty of my customers and clients that I have, we will deploy new campaigns that would only run at a $5 to $10 budget a day. So I see that as almost an equivalent of your whole account being a bit of a low budget e-commerce account. If you have like maybe an e-commerce campaign that you're just testing at that same $10 to $20 a day. So all of these still hold true. Making sure that we're utilizing those search terms, or sorry, that manual cost per click, because we could kind of manipulate through the secondary bid adjustments of gender, household income, location, and just, you really have to know your product. You have to know what you're selling for this to work. Just because if you have a higher budget, you could kind of, I wouldn't say slack off, but you could kind of be a little bit more lethargic with how you're moving, how intentional you are, your analysis. And I'm guilty of this. I'm not analyzing the website enough. I'm not analyzing the product enough. I'm not analyzing the competitive landscape enough. If someone is a direct competitor to your small or low budget e-commerce campaign that you're trying to run, why aren't you completely obsessed with trying to figure out what that e-commerce company is doing, so that you could fill the gaps of being able to say, okay, well, they're going after this search term specifically. I know that's probably going to be expensive because they're getting conversions from it. They're scaling and increasing budget to be aggressive on that search term. Why don't I go to this adjacent search term adjacent collection or product that they're not all over, and maybe I can find some type of traction there. So I think it's super important to not only understand your client if you have a small budget e-com store, but understand their direct competitors, because without that you don't have the full picture. Any thoughts or just questions or anything like that, insights from the points thus far, Ryan?
Yeah, a couple of things actually. I think Gene picks up a really good point there about, Gene's basing it on what's working well for him, specifically what he's seeing inside his client accounts. The same with me. I'm talking from a place where I'm looking at what's working for me and double downing on that. So many times we can all listen to what people are saying on YouTube or podcasts and things like that and go down a rabbit hole and start actually trying these things. And I think that's good. I do think that's good. We all started somewhere, we all learn from somebody, and it's good to test different things, test different strategies, different approaches. But don't lose sight of what works well for you. You want to focus on what's going on inside your own accounts, what is working, and go forward with that. So as much as, some of the top leading industry experts might say, try this, it's new, it's shiny, do that, or do this. This is the new cool approach that we're trying. You could by all means try it. If it doesn't work, though, come back to square one. And, I'm saying this out loud because this is where I am at the moment, is that I've been kind of going down different rabbit holes myself recently, trying a lot of different things that I'm not actually seeing take off. So now I'm bringing it back. I'm bringing things back to basics and looking inside my accounts at what's working for me. So I just want to urge that one. And, Gene picks up on a good point there as well. But, something that Gene said as well is looking at the search terms, and with standard shopping, with search campaigns, we can manage those search terms. We can look at that, evaluate them, add those as negatives and whatnot. As a little pushback, though, I have a client where all the search terms were looking great inside of standard shopping campaigns, and nothing was really moving the needle. I looked at the search campaigns and everything looks great, and it's just really frustrating. So I thought, okay, well, let's try Performance Max, and so far so good. It's really kind of revolutionize the account a little bit, and the specific product category that the client is pushing. So we've only really testing it with one product category. All the others are on standard shopping, but because we were getting really clean, high quality search terms coming through standard shopping, I think that was a bit of a signal for me to try Performance Max at that point. We've got a really good budget. The bidding strategy was great. It was working. And the search terms looked good. Everything to me looked aligned, but the conversions were not coming in for one reason or another. So at that point, you can continue down that path, and eventually conversions may happen, will happen for you, or you could try something else, such as a Performance Max. And for me, I thought I tried that and that worked. So as much as it is good to have search term visibility, manage that, add negative keywords, all that kind of good stuff. I do think in certain cases, look for signals where, okay, why isn't this working? The budget is right, the bidding strategy is right, the search terms are right, the targeting is fine, everything's working well, but we're just not seeing the sales coming in. At that point, I think there's an element where you could try a Performance Max campaign for that specific product category. That was the only thing I was going to mention. Do you think that's fair, Gene?
I think that's exactly how I do most of my customers or most of my clients, for sure.
Cool.
Because most of the time, if you are getting relevant search terms on search and not closing the deal, as they would say, not getting conversions, that's probably just because you need some type of remarketing agent on top, where it could be a reminder cross platform, not just on google.com search specifically, but maybe on a website that's relevant that they search, maybe that extra oomph of nudge from a PMax as the remarketing campaign is going to be what helps close that sell cycle, where it's less just people looking on search, but also them being found also in other areas through remarketing. So I absolutely agree with that. A lot of my campaigns, primarily for the most part, do look like manual or ROAS search campaign with a Performance Max campaign. The only time that I'm going to create a shopping campaign on top of that is really to exploit what has been converting on Performance Max on the product end, seeing a pattern there. I will like to do, a shopping campaign after. But yeah, I totally agree. And, getting back to some of the points that I was discussing, and I'm wrapping up here shortly, a lot of that does work well with manual for me, at least just because, I have so much at my fingertips, even an ad schedule or even, just specific geo targeting. I think that's so important. But one thing that I do want to go over is, making sure that your website, the landing page, is spot on, because a lot of the times, if you're doing a manual campaign on search, you want to be able to go directly to, if not a specific product page, but a brand or collection page. And if that doesn't look good, or that isn't providing the full picture to the customer that just clicked, then you're going to get a pretty large bounce rate, and maybe the conversions aren't going to happen. So make sure that landing pages are on point. And like I said, it's not really me changing my process from a small budget to large budget. All of this is still applicable if you have a large budget, but it's even more important, right? Because all those clicks just have way more magnitude if you only have 10 to 25 a day. So yeah, make sure we do that. And getting on with your Google Merchant Center optimizations, make sure that you have all of that. I don't know how many times we have to stress it, but it's just really important. If you're running Performance Max campaign and you're letting PMax be the shopping agent for your campaign, the data needs to be there. It needs to be all filled out. If it's MPNs, UPCs, item descriptions, categories, taxonomy, all of that needs to be there, just because you're really shooting yourself in the foot. If there's not enough data that Google is pulling from GMC, then how are you going to perform well on shopping? Because that is related to each other. So make sure that that's squared away. And lastly, with search, we have to make sure that we're monitoring search keywords. And I would be more aggressive here. A lot of the times you can get away with maybe a more broad search term that you qualify. But for something that's e-commerce, and we're talking about e-commerce where we're selling something, right? You can be very granular with your descriptor. If it's color, if it's gender in the specific search term, men, women, kids, toddlers, whatever it may be, a specific style, make sure that that is in the search term and you're looking to sculpt towards that. Have a goal in mind with your search campaign, manual search campaign, that this is what I eventually want to be clicked, and the impressions, I want these impressions in my search campaign, and work towards that. And how do you work towards that is being on top of your negative keywords. Don't just go in there and be lazy and just make it the exact match negative keyword, and not also create the negative keyword list that's specific to that search term that you just disqualified, because 8 times out of 10 it's probably going to show up again, and boom, there goes another $2 or £3 that you lost, even though you already saw that this is a negative keyword, and you could have made a negative keyword list to be more broad or phrase, but you just decided not to. And I'm guilty of that. And I'm like Ryan, I'm speaking this out loud because I need to, I have the data right there. The next step is to go on your Google Sheets or Excel, create the negative keyword list that's broad or phrase, so that it's not only exact match and you don't see that pop up again. So, these are very simple tips, but I think, Google Ads isn't about tips and tricks and the unknown. It's the data that we have in front of us. It's very, very simple things that we need to keep up with. And a lot of the times as a PPC manager, one of my pitfalls is maybe I'm not on the account as much as I should be. And I'm saying that out loud, out of transparency. Maybe instead of every 3 days, 4 days, I'm looking at it. Maybe I need to be qualifying search terms more frequently, so I wouldn't feel as, it wouldn't feel as daunting, or it wouldn't feel as an uphill battle because I'm looking at the account daily. I know exactly what's going on. So, it's never about how to be extraordinary, is doing the ordinary extra. I learned that the other day. So I think that's just super important to be consistent as a PPC manager. Any thoughts, Ryan, as we wrap up?
Yeah, I think again you touched on a really good point that I think I'm gonna kind of close off with is we could have the perfect Google Ads account, which by the way I don't believe exists, but we could have the perfect setup, performance max, standard shopping, dynamic search, search campaign, display, whatever it might be. We could have the perfect campaign there, regardless of budget. I know this is more low budget e-commerce, but the point is that we could have the most perfect Google Ads account. But if you don't have any of these three things, it's not going to be a success. Conversion tracking, Google Merchant Center optimization, and landing page slash website. If any of those three elements aren't set up properly or just aren't that great, then you're not going to see the full benefit of the campaigns. This is why, when Gene talks about Google Merchant Center optimizations, yeah, because we don't bid on keywords with standard shopping or Performance Max. With Performance Max, okay, you may have search themes as a signal, but use the keywords inside the product title. That's kind of how we do things, So making sure Google Merchant Center titles are updated, of course, but it's so much more than that. The SKUs, the information, the taxonomy as well that is done, the imagery, all these things play a factor in terms of how successful your shopping or Performance Max campaign will be. Conversion tracking, of course, because we need to feed back into the Google Ads system and show Google what conversions look like for us so that it knows and can double down on that and say, right, I know the typical people that purchase similar products of yours or your products. I'm going to advertise to people that have, shared similar profiles of people that historically converted. So I know that, Steve and Gene have historically purchased. So I know that Ryan and James share similar profiles to Steve and Gene. I'm going to advertise to Ryan and James because I think they'll convert next. So that's kind of how Google Ads works, in my opinion. And then lastly, yeah, get that website up and running, making sure that it's as good as it can be, because if it isn't, it's just no Google Ads campaign can really make up for a really poorly designed website. I think, you're going to just leave money on the table. Competitors are going to get your sales instead. So it's really, really key that you have a well executed, highly converting, great customer experience type of website, really, where people want to shop on. Otherwise, what's stopping them from going to Amazon, where they have their address, where they have their card details already stored and can easily buy the same product, maybe for cheaper on Amazon and get it tomorrow. So you really need to do everything you can to make sure your website is highly optimized and as good as it can be.
Yeah,
That's it from me.
definitely agree with that, and with this, it's just super important for the basics to just kind of shine through, just because, it's, I wouldn't say bare bones budget, but you have, 10 to $25 a day is not a lot, so you really have to make sure that everything outside of Google Ads is, on point, like what Ryan just discussed. And with this, I want to make sure that people know out there, if you have any like questions at all, that's like real life, real time experience where you're like, I am stumped. I have no idea how to navigate, if it's a high budget, low budget e-commerce campaign, or anything just about Google Ads. We're here at the ppccave at gmail.com. And it really helps us because, like we say before, when you teach, you learn twice. And just talking about these things makes us reminded of how we should act and conduct ourselves as PPC managers within the account. And just sometimes you really have to get those basics right over and over again, and not stray away from what has worked for you, because what Ryan says, what I say is best best practice and we talk up from our experience. But, at the end of the day, it's your client, it's your budget, it's your time. You have to find your path also. But yeah, any final last words, Ryan, before we end out?
No, I think we've kind of covered everything really. We're trying to keep the episodes a little bit shorter, aren't we? Uh, but I think when it comes to low budget e-commerce accounts, it can work. There's many different ways to skin a cat. As Gene and I have just alluded to, we have different approaches, but both can work. So it really just comes down to the basic fundamentals of sticking with it, getting the data, having a good website, a good offer, a good service, a good all the above, really, and then your best you get your best chance of success.
Yeah, that sounds good. And so, yeah, again, we're the PPC Cave at gmail.com. Episodes every Monday on Spotify video, on Apple Podcasts and YouTube. And we release Monday, 12 a.m. Mountain Time. If there's anyone awake at 12 a.m. Mountain Time, we just make sure that it's uploaded before you wake up. And you could find Ryan at ryanfentonppc.co.uk. You could find me at genevillanos.com for any of your PPC needs. And if there's nothing else, we'll talk to y'all next time. Bye for now.